Hello, we continue our series Verge3D for Maya Basics. In this part of the tutorial, we'll add annotations to our 3D web application. Annotations are basically markers that contain information about points of interest. Annotations are expandable and can contain descriptions, pictures, web links, and so on. So let's add some annotations. Get back to Maya. Switch to the perspective mode to be sure we won't change the camera view. Go to the side view. Hide the sphere for now. Let's unfold the knife to see where to add the annotations. Annotations can be added to meshes, but a more flexible approach is to use auxiliary objects for that purpose. So let's add a locator object to which an annotation will be assigned. It can be found in rigging. Now let's move the locator to a proper position near the instrument. Let's add more locators for each of the model parts that we want to put some information for. Finally, place the last two locators in the viewport. Let's tweak the positions of these locators a bit. We should also give these locators meaningful names so that we can access them later with the puzzles. Let's just copy and paste the name of the corresponding object and add an underscore and a suffix annotation. Another thing we want to do is to parent each locator to the corresponding object, so that they move together during animation. Let's do it with all the locators. So we are done here. Let's switch back to the camera view. And export to Verge3D. Launch with Puzzles Editor. But before we begin to add annotations, let's create a new tab in the editor for them. We've got lots of puzzles already, so it makes sense to split them between workspaces. To create a new tab, simply click on the plus button on the top and type some name for it, say Annotations. So we now have a new space to work. Let's add an annotation. There is a puzzle for that in the Objects category. The first field here is the name of the annotation. We'll leave just the number. Then we need a selector for the object to which the annotation will be assigned. Remember that we named all the locators in Maya consistently, so we know which locator corresponds to which instrument. Next field is for description, which is displayed for an annotation when it is clicked. For simplicity, we'll be using just a single word here, but it's possible to use text, web links, images, and even videos here. The last field is the ID for the HTML element that represents an annotation. We could possibly leave it as is, but let's put our own ID there. These IDs will be used to access these HTML elements later. Now click Run. Here we go, we just created our first annotation. If we click on the annotation, it expands, showing the text that we typed for the description. Let's create annotations for the rest of the objects. We'll be changing the numbers, selecting objects, changing descriptions, and HTML element IDs for each of them. So all 12 annotations are added. Let's check it out in the application. So they are all here. Notice that some of them clickable and some are not, due to being obscured by geometry. Anyway, if we unfold the knife, these annotations are no longer obscured and become clickable. So it makes sense to hide those of them that are obscured in the folded state. So let's hide them with the puzzles. To hide them, we can use the HTML puzzle set style, the same puzzle that we previously used to hide the UI buttons. Make sure that this puzzle is positioned below the puzzles that create annotation in the first place, so that our setStyle puzzle have annotations to work with. As before, we'll be changing the property called display. Let's specify the ID for the HTML element which we'll be hiding. Let's begin with the annotation number 2. In order to hide this element, the new value for the display property should be none. The checkbox in parent doc must not be checked, since these elements are created in the inner HTML file and do not belong to the UI HTML file. Let's save and run it. As we can see, the annotation number 2 disappeared. Let's hide all other annotations that we want to be hidden in the folded state. It is very convenient to put their IDs in a single list. In total, there are 6 annotations that should be hidden. If we run the puzzles now, we can see that all these 6 annotations disappeared as expected. Now let's implement a scenario when these hidden annotations become visible again after the knife is unfolded. Let's copy this group of puzzles, switch to the main tab where the scenario for folding and unfolding is implemented, and paste the puzzles here. We should place it inside the finished slot of the play animation puzzle. Be sure to change display to block, meaning that after the knife is unfolded, these 6 annotations should become visible. Let's save the puzzles and go to the application tab to check it out. Let's unfold the knife. Indeed, the initially hidden annotations have become visible. Let's copy this group of puzzles and put it inside the puzzle which folds the knife. Make the value none, meaning that after the knife is folded, these 6 annotations should become hidden. Let's see how it works. Unfold, annotations appear. Fold back, obscured annotations become hidden. So it works perfectly. Now let's make the third button hide and reveal all the annotations. Let's implement this behavior with the puzzles. Just like we did with the animation buttons, let's add a puzzle called onEvent. For this button element, we assigned the ID annotation button in Webflow. When this button is clicked, we want to hide all 12 annotations. So let's add them all to the list. Be sure to check in parent doc, since this button is part of the outer HTML file. Let's see how it works. If we click the button, all the annotations become hidden. Now let's implement revealing the annotations when that button is clicked again. Just like we did with folding and unfolding animation, we'll be using a variable to track the visibility of the annotations. So let's name it Annotations Visible. Initially we want the annotations to be visible, so let's set this variable to true. We'll be checking this variable every time the button is clicked. So if this variable is true, we should hide the annotations. Else, we should reveal them by specifying block value for these HTML elements. We should also switch our variable according to changing visibility. Once the annotations become hidden, this variable is set to false. Other way around, once they are revealed, the variable is set back to true. Let's save the puzzles and check out the application. So clicking this button now hides and reveals the annotations. There is a small issue, however. All 12 annotations are now visible, even if the knife is folded. So we should take into account the state of the knife as well. let's implement checking the variable that tracks the knife, which is called knife unfolded. Let's place the puzzles for revealing the annotations inside this comparison. So only if the knife is unfolded, all the annotations should be revealed. Otherwise, if the knife is folded, we only reveal 6 of them. That is, the annotations that are not obscured. So let's copy and paste this group of puzzles. Set the display value to block, meaning they will be revealed. Now add here only those 6 annotations that should be visible when the knife is folded. Save and check the app again. Hide, reveal, works correctly in the folded state. Unfold the knife, fold again, annotations behave correctly. Let's check the annotation button in the unfolded state. Also works fine. While it looks like everything is working correctly, we may still discover a bug. Namely, if we hide the annotations first and then unfold the knife, we can see that some annotations appear anyway. This is because we disregarded the state of annotations when we were handling folding and unfolding. So let's fix this bug in our scenario. Let's find the puzzles that run the unfolded animation. Here we'll add another checking, namely whether the annotation should be revealed after the knife is unfolded. We'll be using the variable annotations visible. So, if its value is true, meaning the annotation button is set to visible state, the annotation should be allowed to appear. Okay, let's check this. So, if we check all possible states that our application may have, we can see that everything works fine. Now let's visually mark the state of this annotation button, to make the user aware of whether it is active or not. We can do it by swapping the icon for this button every time it is clicked. So we'll need another icon for it. It can be copied from the starter files to the application folder. To the images subfolder to be exact. We'll be changing the background image CSS property of this button. So let's open the browser console, what we'll be using for inspecting this element in a moment. In the puzzles editor, add a puzzle called setStyle for CSS rule. This puzzle is different from the previously used puzzle called simply setStyle. It modifies global CSS declarations rather than CSS properties of an individual element. So let's find the property that we want to change, background image. Let's put it inside the puzzle for clicking, as it will be changed when the user clicks on the button. Be sure to check in parent doc. Now we need the name of a CSS rule. To make no mistake, in the console, click on the top left button and then click on the button element. In the window on the right, you can see the CSS style declaration, the name of which we should copy. Paste it to the text puzzle. Now let's provide the new value. It is a good idea to just copy the old value from the inspector and reuse it for our purpose. We only need to change the name of the image in the path. Just replace visible with hidden to obtain the name of the new image. Save and refresh the app. If we click the button now, its background image is actually changed, in addition to the annotations being hidden. But of course, we should restore the original image when this button is clicked again. So let's duplicate this puzzle and provide the name for the original image. Now the image is changed back and forth as per repeating clicks. So this is it with the mechanics, and now we are looking to styling the annotations themselves. This topic is a bit advanced, since we'll be overriding the styles manually. For this part, you can use any text editor. We'll be using the popular text editor called Atom. Let's open the application folder in Atom. Now locate and click the file called swissarmyknife.css. Here we'll be overriding the default CSS declarations for the annotations. In fact, Verge3D exposes a few CSS classes specifically for that purpose. So the first class we'll be overriding is called .v3d-annotation. It defines the style of these round buttons. First of all, let's make them smaller. So let's set their width to 20 pixels, as well as the height, also 20 pixels. We should also set the min width property to 0. Let's check it. The buttons actually were made smaller, but now they look distorted. In fact, we can get rid of the numbers entirely. To do this, we can simply set the font size property to 0 pixels. So there are no numbers anymore, but the annotations still look weird. To fix their form, let's also set the padding property to 0 pixels. So now we have smaller and perfectly round annotations. Now let's change their color, which we can do by using the property called background color. Set it to white. Now let's add icons to these rounds. We have the image for this purpose in the starter files. Its name is info.svg. Let's copy it to the application folder, to the images subfolder to be exact. Now let's assign this icon to the annotation using the background image property. Here, we should specify the path to our image. Let's check the application. The annotations now look much prettier. By the way, the annotation look a bit shifted relative to the locators. So let's reset their position by setting both top and left properties to 0 pixels. They still look shifted though. So let's make it minus 10 pixels. Now the annotations are perfectly centered. Now let's style this small dialog window, which appears when an annotation is clicked. It can be styled using another CSS class exposed by Verge3D. Let's type its name: Verge3D annotation dialog. At first, let's change its background color. Apparently, we should also swap the color for the font to make it visible on the white background. Better now, but it looks like too much free space. This can be fixed by modifying the padding values. Make it 8 pixels for top, left, right and bottom padding. A bit better, but still a lot of free space. Let's also override the min width property. This makes the pop-up window adapt to the length of text. As you can notice, the dialog window is positioned too far from the annotation. Let's fix this with CSS by setting margin left to 20 pixels. Also set margin top to 20 pixels. Much better now. Finally, we may notice that the obscured and normal annotations look almost the same. So let's make the difference between them more stark. For obscured annotations, Verge3D has a dedicated CSS class called Verge3D Annotation Transparent. First of all, let's make the obscured annotations more translucent by using the opacity property that we set to 0.3. Also change its background color to gray rather than white. Now the difference is noticeable. Looks like we forgot about the border. Let's remove it by overriding the border property in the main annotation style. Now the annotations look and behave just like we wanted them. That's it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.